Come one, come all to the After Dark Podcast. The podcast in which Sheriff Anthony does his best to wrangle Konrad through Westworld, one doggone episode at a time. So kick back and grab yourself some Apple Jack, or some Adam's Ale if that's your preferred poison, and get ready for these two wannabe cowboys to ramble the night away. Music was provided by the fantastic Nancy Wyatt and Jared Iscariot. Enjoy the show! Hello, and welcome to the After Dark Podcast. I'm Anthony James, and that's Konrad.
Hello.
Hello, Konrad. How are you this week?
I'm very well. I'm boosted. I'm performing at 110% efficiency with these antibodies coursing through my system, and I'm ready to talk to the world about Westworld, episode 4?
At this point, Konrad and Anthony rambled on about politics and board games for a good 2 or 3 minutes. If you want to hear that, stay around to the end. This episode of Westworld, there's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about, would you believe? First of all, let's just focus on the Man in Black, because he's losing his marbles here. Tootles from Hook. My marbles. He's losing them.
I'm going to be honest with you. I kind of... what I tend to do when I don't really understand what's happening is I sort of fire from the hip and kind of assume a storyline is going in a certain direction. Then when it doesn't, I get upset. And right at the beginning of this episode, having watched the Man in Black post-credit scene from the end of season 2 before the previous episode, I was coming into this absolutely certain this entire season is just a vision inside the insane mind of William. that's how this is kind of ending. And by the end of this episode, I was disappointed because I don't think that's going to happen, and that's a shame. But I do not understand how they are just shrugging off the amount of damage he took. I know I don't want to bang on about it. I don't want to be a broken record. But the only thing they do in this episode is Charlotte Bott mentions that he's been on sabbatical. And it's like, okay, has he been on sabbatical to just heal the multiple gunshot injuries that he had? Like, they just don't mention it. He has a little bandage on his hand, and that's it. And it's like... Season
what's
2
going on with his
began
hand?
with it. I don't know. He's probably cracked a glass or something.
Did his hand get cut off at some point?
I think he got shot in it. Probably he got shot in literally every part of his body.
Yeah, I don't know. Do we talk about that? Am I just having a fever dream? Am I William right now? Because even in this episode, you don't really see his right hand ever. Like he's maybe he just lost. Maybe did his hand get cut off?
Maybe it's
cut off by the Native Americans potentially.
I feel like I just saw him get shot in his hand at some point, to be honest. Okay. I just think it I don't know how I feel about this, because the idea of like his daughter reconnecting, I think there's something else at play here, because I think the idea of his daughter reconnecting with him in the park felt a little odd, and then it's kind of established, or it's kind of implied, I think, in this episode, that she was dead before that ever happened, and that the stuff that's kind of the visions he's having of her are just his own like psychosis kind of haunting him. That was my interpretation of it.
No, I think they are still sticking with the idea that he killed her in the park.
Okay, that feels weird.
The fact that you didn't know that is what it shows you how confusing it is. You know?
Yeah, I know we don't know that much about the character, but it feels odd for her to try and reconnect with him in the park rather than, I don't know, finding out where he is and then waiting for him to leave.
Well, you have to remember that she only started looking for him after she got attacked by hosts, and it was like life or death.
That's
so
true.
She got
that is true.
Thrown into it in that way. However, having said that and supporting it, I will say that whenever a character gets introduced and you sort of start liking the character, and then they prove to be just literally a device for a different character to have a storyline, it always feels bad, and you start going back and questioning. Hang on, is that what's going on? That's all she was.
She was kind of. I don't know. Do you know the expression "fridging" as well? Have you ever heard that before?
I think I have heard it, but I don't know what it means.
It's normally for like wives and girlfriends. It's basically like a trope of storytelling where you introduce a wife or a girlfriend for a male character so that they can be horrifically murdered, and that acts as a plot development for the
basically
for
what I'm
main
explaining.
character. And it's because their body is like, chopped up or whatever and stuffed in a fridge. I think it relates back to a comic or something where that initially
Okay.
happened. But that's kind of what they did with her, where it's like, here's a
Yes.
character, and then she's going to die, and that's going to be used to motivate the Man in Black. And it's it's not, narrative tropes aren't inherently flawed. You can use narrative tropes. I don't have a problem with characters dying to motivate the actions of others, but I think it's a bit lazy, and it kind of especially with a character like, I can't even remember her name now. She
Emily
might have been Emily, yeah. But she seemed like a potentially interesting character, and it was a shame to lose her as early as we did. I will also say, with this plot line, we're getting into kind of like corporate espionage.
Yes.
Which I enjoy and I'm very into, but
you've got to have it in this dystopian world.
I agree. I absolutely think you do need to have it. But I've been watching quite a lot of Succession recently. I've started watching season 1 of Succession because I had a lot of people recommend that to me. I feel like if someone on your board is clearly as not in a fit state of mind as William is, you can just vote to remove their power to vote on things, rather than like trying to kind of strong arm them into voting in a certain way or supporting you in board action.
That was that. Geez, you got the wool pull over your eyes there, Konrad. That was never the way. Like, the whole point was that these were the guys who took him away at the end were the whole point of Charlotte in this episode was to get him committed at the end with those two men. He was never actually going to be voting anyway.
Okay, I took that as like that was a change of plan. I felt like there was a point at which she was going to try and get him on side as a board member, and she changed her mind. But maybe I've just misinterpreted that.
Maybe. But that's just down to interpretation, I suppose. Yeah.
I'm trying to think if I've got anything else. We get this isn't really a MacGuffin, but we get a like kind of MacGuffin-ish sounding thing mentioned here when there's the project in Sector 16. I don't know if that's Westworld or whether that's something else. Maybe it is just Westworld, and I've kind of attributed more meaning to that.
The project in Sector 16, wasn't that just that sort of heavenly place? What do they call it? The Forge.
Oh, okay, yeah, the Forge, where all the consciousnesses of hosts have gone, and to
then
live.
They blasted it away, but then
to Saturn.
But to Saturn or whatever, yeah. But Dolores still has a key for it, apparently. Anyway, yeah. So that's Man in Black. There's a few things we could talk about, like the fact that he was wearing, when he was going to go to the board meeting, he dressed in black. So therefore, he's sort of bringing more of his Westworld character into the real world now. There's a whole load of stuff, especially as well. Like Ed Helms apparently was not a big fan and complained a lot about this season. Oh, Ed Helms. No. Ed Harris. Not Ed Helms
would have been a very interesting choice for the Man in Black.
I mean, if he brings his banjo, I'm all for it.
That'd be great.
But yeah, Ed Harris. The 90-year-old man, as Konrad says. But Ed Harris.
I'm never going to be allowed to forget that I've called Ed Harris way older than he actually is. I'm never going to be allowed to move on from this.
Yeah, so you in like 20 years' time, you're gonna ring me up and say, "See, he is 90."
Yeah, he's 90 now.
Yeah.
But I'll be in my 50s then, and I'll be a withered husk myself, just like.
People will be calling you 90.
Oh,
but basically, my point is that Ed Harris didn't like this season at all, and he complained heavily about it because I think the quote is something like, "I signed up to play the Man in Black, not the Man in White," and he doesn't like. When he signed up to the show, he was this like badass guy in the Old West, and there's other intricacies there too. But when his character got to the point where he was just like in a mental institution, he was just like, what am I doing here? Why am I doing this show?
They've not really explored the mental anguish that character's gone through as a result of the traumas that he's experienced, often traumas that he has also inflicted on others at the same time. So I think I can get that, because the show hasn't seemed that interested in really diving into that aspect of his character. Like, they mention it, obviously, he kills his daughter, but
up until now they went from nothing to everything.
Because I think we literally said it might have even been the episode after he kills his daughter, he's like kind of fine, like, because he's kind of like carrying on as normal. And there was no real build to a breaking point for the character. It just sort of, he carried on for the whole season. And then in this season, it's like, okay, he's having visions now, I guess, and he's had a complete mental breakdown. So
I don't know how I feel about visions. Like, to be honest with you, in terms of characters going mad and characters being mentally unhinged, I'm very picky in terms of how I like it represented, and I sometimes I'm okay with like visions and stuff, but to be honest with you, it's not working for me. Like,
no, I tend to agree, especially in a show where they often depict hosts having conversations with manifestations of other people's personalities inside their own heads. Literally happens in this episode, I think. That we'll get to, I guess, in a second. But so when you're doing that, and then you also do humans having visions, it just becomes a bit confusing, I think.
Yeah. I would agree. Right, well, let's talk about your main man, Sonata's back. He's
Yes.
He's the head of the Yakuza now.
Oh.
What did you think when you saw him? Obviously, they were going to have him.
Lovely to have him back. Lovely to have Hiroyuki Sanada back. I have to say, I was a bit disappointed with where that revelation as to which personality is in him and is in a Scottish man whose name I haven't caught yet.
Connells, I think.
Connell sounds right. Yeah. And
Scottish,
also Maeve.
Scottish Connells.
Not Maeve. Who am I thinking of? What's
You're thinking of Charlotte.
Charlotte, that's it, yeah.
It's only the bloody queen of New Asgard.
That is true. Yeah, I should put more respect on Tessa Thompson's characters, to be honest. But yeah, so I love that storyline begins with Bernard and Dolores seemingly having a conversation in some kind of simulation based on the aspect ratio change, because it, as often happens with this show, it asks questions of when that is happening. I'm assuming that's going to be something we haven't seen yet, based on where Bernard and Dolores kind of are throughout this episode. And I think they're
doing some timeline stuff here again.
Yeah, they are, and I think actually within the one continuity, I really liked the converging timelines of Dolores and Bernard and Maeve all coming together to try and kidnap / kill.
That was cool.
Liam Dempsey,
at the Masquerade Ball,
at the Masquerade Ball. That stuff was great. And you get little bits of the kind of cool cyberpunk world building in there. So you get encryption keys in blood, which is just the perfect kind of stupid. I love that. It's just the dumbest thing, but whatever. I'm happy. I'm happy to have that. You've got mentions of divergences and Rehoboam, like interstitials that look like Rorschach tests. Like, there's a lot of cool stuff going on here. I was a little disappointed when we get to the kind of big showdown with Maeve and the this actually happens before that, I think, doesn't it? Before the Eyes Wide Shut sequence, Maeve faces off with. But it's happening while it's happening.
Yeah. Yes, it is. Yes.
But Maeve shows has a showdown with the Yakuza. We get Hiroyuki Sanada, and we get the revelation that Dolores has duplicated herself 4 more times.
Well, duplicated 3.
Yeah, duplicated 3, because she's in Connell, Hiroyuki Sanada's, Masashi, and Charlotte, and herself. So, which it is cool and it's interesting, and it, like, as someone who has watched in preparation for the new Matrix movie coming out next week, someone who has watched Matrix Reloaded quite recently, the idea of a AI or machine replicating itself hundreds and hundreds of times to take over a world is definitely one that I am interested in. Not necessarily done well in either of these, but it's an interesting idea. I was a little disappointed that it kind of pulled the rug out from under me in terms of playing a guessing game of which hosts it was going to be, because I was really excited to see. I mentioned it in the last season, but I was really excited to be like, this is Tessa Thompson playing Teddy, or this is Dolores playing Maeve or whatever, But we don't get that. It's just all Dolores.
Yeah, and we before we started recording, we were talking a little bit, and it was talking about, like, so what's going on in terms of them all being Dolores, and the specifics are, I think, that she copied. It's like she copied herself 3 times. And then she placed herself in these like, she has no like ESP or like Wi-Fi ability to talk to these other brains. I'm sure she can in some mechanical way, but I would imagine I would imagine that it's just like, from now on, these characters are their own thing, but it's just like they're all like twins, but they all like started off being split when they were like 30 years old or whatever.
Yeah.
So now they're growing into their own things from the same starting point,
Yeah, and I think it could be there's interesting stuff they can do with this, because I think what it could potentially do is give us a look into Dolores's character that we've potentially been robbed of. You kind of start them all at the same point and then see how their personalities and behaviors diverge as they have different experiences. What I'd be really interested to see them do, and this is kind of me backseating the show a little bit, but it'd be fun, is if you have Dolores's relationship with Caleb developing to the point where she kind of comes to understand that actually humanity doesn't need to be eradicated. There is some hope for humanity, but she has lost control of the other Doloreses, and they go on paths that make them much more antagonistic towards humanity, and basically you get Dolores trying to undo her own actions to save humanity at the end of this. I think that could be a really cool overarching storyline.
That would be cool.
Basically,
like it's like herself versus herself. That is cool. I like that idea.
Because it seems like her plan at the moment with Caleb is to essentially appropriate Rehoboam and use it to break the world, but I don't think the plan is necessarily to, in doing so, kill all humans. I think she just wants to free like all of humanity and all living creatures on including hosts on Earth from this kind of cyclical existence that they're all forced into. Whereas I could see one of the other versions of her. I'm going to say Connell to start things off with, because he seems like the most just violent of the four. Although Hiroyuki Sanada's up there as the troublemaker. And speaking of violence with Dolores, I will also say the Stubbs Dolores fight was great. I very much enjoyed Stubbs having something to do. It was good fun, even if he, I presume, is dead at the at the end of this.
Yeah, well, I like as well that he was like, basically like, saying sorry about this, but I have to do it or whatever. I like the little moment they had before they started fighting, and obviously then you get the really cheesy, drugs, all these things good,
that is so dumb.
Liam's friends watching. I thought that was pretty stupid. That was so Dolores being these other characters as well wasn't the biggest revelation in the show in this episode. The biggest revelation is that Paris no longer exists.
Paris is burning. Yeah. It's not burning. It's just not there anymore. Apparently.
Yeah, it's
gone. So what? I'm gonna go out on a limb and say they're just never gonna mention what happened again, and it's just gonna be left to our imagination to figure out why Vincent Cassell or what is his Isaac Corduroy? What's his name?
Isaac Corduroy, Engeron Serac.
I wasn't that far off. I was close.
Corduroy.
It's not a French name. I don't know what that name is. It doesn't sound like a real series of words.
Engerond.
Engelbert Humperdinck is
Serac.
He had to flee Paris as a child because it was nuked, or there was some kind of nuclear incident, because there was a big old mushroom cloud above it. I kind of love it. It's that same kind of dystopian world building, but it does feel a little bit like kind of the grass is greener on that side of the storytelling field, so to speak.
Yeah. So you think they're not going to show it at all? We're not going to find out.
I'm going to be a cynic and say no. I don't think so. I don't.
That's not cynical. That's great. I would love it if they just started mentioning random places around the world and go on.
Yeah, it's just like actually this Eastern Russia just fell into the ocean. That's just not there anymore.
We need a reason for Serac not to be in France. What could it be?
Yeah.
What could it be?
I don't know. There's no way Vincent Cassell would leave Paris. There's no way.
Yeah. Maybe he just immigrated. No. Too unrealistic. Okay, we'll burn Paris to the ground. Yeah, the only solution. The only solution to get that character out of France.
France no longer exists. It's been scoured from the earth. And all French people have had to diaspora their way to different countries,
which is really interesting actually, because we've only really met one French character. So where are all the other French people?
Well, they're dead.
Yeah. So he's the only one who made it out.
Did we see anyone else escaping? I'm trying to think, or was it just him? I can't remember.
I think there's two of them running through those.
Oh, so there you go. So there's one other French person in the world, like whoever that.
Well, he had the hobby of running through, like basically like old Theresa May used to have, running through a field of wheat.
A field of irradiated wheat.
Yeah.
Oh, the childhood he lived.
So if only everyone else had the same hobby as him, running through a field of wheat. I mean, we've all done it. We've all done it. We've all run through a field of wheat.
I can't be within 100 feet of a wheat field without feeling that childlike compulsion within me to run through it.
Oh my god. Okay, so overall then, I don't think there's much else to talk about in this episode, to be honest with you. I think we've talked about all the main points. Unless I've missed something, let us know in the comments, guys. Konrad, overall, maybe tell us overall what you thought of the episode, and maybe give us a little prediction for the rest of the season. There's 4 episodes left.
It was okay. I thought it was not as good as some of the episodes this season, but I am interested to see where it goes. I really do hope that Dolores kind of versus Dolores storyline is how this develops going forward, because I think that could be interesting. I can't believe Maeve is just dead. I like, that seems unlikely that they're just going to be like, yeah, I guess she's dead now, whatever. But we shall see about that.
Well, they did have the people coming in.
Yes, they did, and she's also in a Yakuza storage plant full of the host milk.
Plenty of milk about. So she should be okay.
So much milk around for her to be remade with. If anything, she'll be better than ever.
Just pump her up with that cortical fluid.
Yeah.
Whatever the hell you call it. Is it cortical fluid or is it the actual 3D print material? What do you think of it? Are those one and the same?
Listen, if you're asking me to do the writer's job for them and distinguish between those two magical liquids, I'm going to tell you I'm not going to do it, all right? Because they haven't. Sometimes it's milk that goes in the nuts. Sometimes it's milk that goes on the body. I don't know the difference, and I don't think Lisa Joy or Kevin Nolan know the difference either.
Well, Kevin Nolan.
Is that the main character from Home Alone?
No, that's Kevin McAllister.
Kevin McAllister. Okay, Kevin Nolan's the former Bolton Wanderers midfielder.
Yeah. Kevin Nolan, Jesus.
What is his? I'm terrible with names today. They've all slipped out of my brain.
Jonathan Nolan.
Oh well, that's not that far away from Kevin.
Almost said Stephen Nolan there. No, Jonathan Nolan. Okay, guys, thanks very much for listening, and we will see you next week. Actually, no, we won't see you next week, guys. Sorry, forgot to say. We will see you the week after, because next week is, of course, Christmas. We do have 1 or 2 little things being released here and there, but for overall, we're taking a week off of the podcasts. We got families to visit and all that sort of thing, so I'm sure you do too. So have a good time, and we'll see you hopefully back safe and sound after the Christmas holidays. So goodbye.
Merry Christmas and goodbye.
Season 3, episode 4, The Mother of Exiles. I am as well boosted, feeling great, feeling boosted. Seek your own medical advice from your doctor. Okay, so I do want to say out the get-go, don't wrap me in with Konrad there in terms of the antibody. There's no antibodies in these vaccines.
They're not antibodies. I don't know how they work, to be honest. No, all I know is that I've never had better Wi-Fi reception than I do now.
Okay, that's a sarcastic joke. But basically, if the sound isn't good, it's because the magnetism is ruining my microphone here.
Oh, it's great. It's great because we're both not idiots. And we understand that doctors and nurses know better than we do about this stuff.
100%. I've never told a pilot to take a right here. He knows where he's going.
Oh, I linger behind them. I'm just like, put the wheels up now, are you? And just give him a little advice.
Yeah. All right. Anyway, let's move into the Westworld now. So, it's interesting that isn't actually you think that's tangential, but it's that sort of conversation is actually kind of the theme of this show now. The conversation of people being like, brainwashed by social media and like going on a track and being like, living the life that's laid out for them is basically what the show is doing. And it's very,
well,
very relevant.
I think this is only a partial joke, actually. I do think that like TV shows and movies that depict dystopias are becoming less and less fun because I feel like the society we live in is rapidly hurtling towards those dystopias.
Well, of course. I think we even talked about this in real life in the last week or so. Like, people play Monopoly, from a young age. So why the hell is it such big news to everyone that that's how the world's going? We're at the point now where there's like 5 or 6 companies which own nearly everything.
Yeah.
Someone's going to win.
Someone needs to tip the board over in the traditional Monopoly fashion and say,
we are going to have a company. We're going to have a Rehoboam, which is our god, and we're going to have one company, and it's gonna own everything. And if you don't think that's going to happen, and you think this is just crazy, wokeism gone mad. If you think that's what it is, well then you've never played Monopoly in your life, and you need to get a life. Truly, Konrad. Actually, let's be honest with you.
Yeah, let's get a life and play Monopoly. No one.
I would. I would never recommend playing Monopoly. Monopoly is one of those things where when people find out I play board games, they always say, "Oh, Monopoly." I'm like, God, there is so much more to board games. If your head doesn't go past Monopoly and Cluedo, you need to be looking more. There's a whole subculture here, guys.
I'd go as far as, I don't even know if you really call it a board game, but Scrabble is like kind of my entry level. Scrabble and Trivial Pursuit they're not really board games. I suppose they're more kind of like quiz games.
Scrabble's a board game. Scrabble's a board game.
But I like a good intellectual pursuit.
I like a good intellectual pursuit, but you don't like Cranium. Cranium's probably the next. It's quite childish.
I've never played Cranium. I've heard it's good.
Good game. Anyway, guys. So basically, I just want to say that all that vaccine talk earlier on, that was not political. So anyone wants to comment now? Our listeners are very, I think they're on out the same wavelength as us at this point, Konrad.
Yeah, I would say so.
But I would just say that if anyone wants, anyone randomly listening going, I liked it until they got political. Listening to doctors isn't political. Okay.
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing maybe is political, but listening to doctors is not.
No.